hearing about the five elements in Chinese philosophy, it may seem a little foreign, it may seem a little hard to wrap your brain around, probably because in the West, in our philosophical traditions, they seem to only have four elements: earth, air, fire, water. Even Ayurveda has this, and then they have, this mysterious fifth element of the ether. However, Chinese thought is different in that it has five elements, which is, let's see, what are they? Metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. Those are the five elements, and each element corresponds to an organ. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you how each organ generates, or not how each organ, how each element generates the other elements. And it may be so obvious that we just never understood it. It may be so easy to understand, then for that reason it's very difficult. Now keep in mind, I'm obviously not Chinese. I'm obviously not a Chinese doctor, so I'm going to pass on the information as best as I can as I've been researching it and learning it and applying it in my own life. So the first element we're going to start with is metal. Metal corresponds to the lungs, the large intestine, and the skin. Now, what generates metal? Where do you find metal? You find metal in the earth. If you wanted to find a metal, where do you go? You dig in the earth and you dig it out of the metal. Hence mining, and hence these processes to where we mine or dig these metals out of the earth. So earth is said to generate metal. Now this will all come around in a circle, so we'll come back to where we started. And you'll see how this all makes sense when we're done. Now the next element will be water. Water corresponds to the kidneys, the urinary bladder, the bones, the skeletal, the frame of the body. And water is generated by metal. There's two ways it's generated by metal. For one, if you leave, a piece of metal outside, what condenses on it? Water. You go out to look at your car first thing in the morning and you see water condensed. So it's said that the metal is generating the water. Secondly, underneath rivers and flowing bodies of water, there's always metals, and these kinds of things are found under it, minerals, things like that. So for that reason, metal generates water. Next element is the element of wood, and wood corresponds with the liver and the gallbladder. So what generates wood? This might be pretty obvious. Water generates wood. Why? What do plants and trees need to grow? They need water. The more, if you keep the balance of water correct for the tree, it's going to grow and it's going to be strong. Obviously it needs fire and other things, but you can see that without water, it's not going to grow. Next element is that of fire. Fire obviously needs wood to burn, to be alive. Without wood, we wouldn't really be able to have fire. We wouldn't be able to know what fire was, because you go back to the ancient consciousness, and to have fire, you need wood, so wood generates fire. So the next element is earth. So I forgot to mention that fire is associated with the heart and the small intestine. Just wanted to throw that in. And the next element is earth. And earth corresponds to the stomach and the spleen. And earth is said to be generated by fire, because what's produced by fire? Ash, and things are burned and they go down, they go back into the earth, and they're regenerated, and that turns into earth or soil. So that's how the five elements kind of go together. And then likewise, earth generates metal, water, wood, fire, earth, and it just goes on in a cycle. And that's called the generation sequence. Now keep in mind, the context here is a little bit different. So to our mind, when we think metal, we think of a car. But to the ancient consciousness, their idea of metal was something much more heavenly and something much more spiritual and magical, because they didn't have these skyscrapers and things like that. They think their technology was much more fundamental and based on wood and things like that. So things like metals and working with metals was much more significant. So how to illustrate this is that the metal element is associated with the lungs. Into their mind, we bring heaven down into our body. So we breathe in with our lungs, we bring heaven down into our body, or prana, or chi, or whatever you will call it, into our body with the lungs. So it's very much how the metal element is associated with, things that are more spiritual. So that's the five elements. And keep in mind, This isn't the Chinese thought, it's a little bit different than the Ayurvedic thought, it's a little bit different than the Western thought. So I just wanted to pass this along because it's something I've been reading about lately. I've been reading about, each of us has an elemental personality type. Some of us are metal types, some of us are fire types. And again, it's important to understand these because, we understand, okay, well, what does metal do? How does metal act? Or how does wood act? What does wood do? What does wood control? And we can see at a very common sense, practical way, insights into ourselves, insights into a particular situation, insights into an entire year, depending on how it is, because to the Chinese and to this Taoist thought, the five elements is everything. If you understand the five elements, there's nothing in reality that you can't understand because everything is made up of these elements. It's like if you go to a foreign country and you don't know the language, you're going to be pretty hindered at what you can do. But if you know the language, you're going to be much more effective. You're going to be able to get things done that you need to get done. You're going to be able to achieve things and do things. Likewise, we don't really, know the language of the universe, the language of how things are put together on a physical level. Sure, we know, E equals mc squared, or, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We know these things, but how practical is that really? How much empowering energy is that equation giving you? Not too much. But if you understand that everything is the five elements, each person is made up of the five elements, their personality type is made up of a certain element, you can tune in and say, okay, well, what's the element here? Okay, well, they're a very wood type. Okay, well, what does wood type do? Okay, well, what generates a wood type? What's going to feed this person? Okay, well, what's going to check the person? Let's say they're out of balance. Well, what checks wood? What checks fire? What puts out fire? Well, water puts out fire. Okay, well, if you have a fire type and you need to maybe balance them out or control them in some way, obviously beneficially. Okay, well, what does water do? What would water do in this situation? And boom, you have an insight. You have a workable formula and a workable paradigm that's empowering and common sense and easy to understand. But what keeps us from understanding it is our conditioning and our associations with, metal is skyscrapers and metal is cars and things like that, when in reality, based on the science, it's a lot different. Fire is different, earth is different, water is different understanding. It's a more common sense, a less conditioned understanding. So, without getting too wordy or getting too into this, because it's something I've been, researching a lot lately, reading like 5 books at the same time, just trying to take in a lot of information. I just wanted to pass this stuff along, and hopefully you can understand the 5 elements a little bit better. I'll be talking about it more, of course, in upcoming videos. So, if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.